my producer step into the screen for a moment. I am excited to be here. Let me first take an opportunity and welcome everyone who is watching and listening around the country. Definitely in one of my favorite places on the planet, Detroit, Michigan. Excited about that. Let me give you just a few housekeeping instructions. Number one, we are live on our Facebook, Instagram, our YouTube page as well. And this interview is being recorded live that we will air on both the national radio show and on all of our social media pages. It is a conversation with Frankie Darcell's podcast. I'm excited about the guests that we're going to have joining me. Let me also introduce to you, you see him here in the screen. His name is Reese Green. Reese, you can wave. Reese is a former intern. I believe what you give to the community, you give back, particularly to our young people. A former intern with me. He will be graduating from St. Joe's University in May. And congratulations to him. He is going to be monitoring all of our social media pages and taking your questions. So please put your questions in the comments and we will take those questions and we will ask them of our guests coming up in just minutes. I also want to recognize Hannah. Hannah is a sophomore at Morgan State University, my alma mater from the city of Detroit, a Cass Tech graduate. She is a sophomore at Morgan State University and she will be monitoring the questions as well and submitting them. It is my honor to welcome a gentleman who I have had the opportunity to know for quite some time, and for full transparency, a former member, before I started moving around the country, a former member of Triumph Church, both my mother, my daughter, and I. So as a member, I understand the great spiritual impact that he has on his members and the city of Detroit. But he has decided to jump into the game of politics and jumped in 2 feet. Pastor Kinloch, welcome to Conversations with Frankie Darcell. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm excited to be with you today.
Very good. Now, I'm going to go back for just one moment.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, and it's been a minute.
Yes.
And I'm not doing an interview. I'm doing a conversation with Pastor Kinloch. And let me say this. The members of Triumph Church love you. Yes. They love themselves some you. So yes. I am speaking to two people this morning. I'm speaking to Pastor Kinloch.
Yes.
And I'm speaking to the candidate for mayor.
Yes.
I want your members to know that, right?
Yes.
I asked you a couple of years ago if you would support two initiatives that I work on. One is a breast cancer survivor to support a walk that we did, and you graciously accepted, came and do what you do so graciously and so brilliantly. And one of the food drives that I was doing, and you agreed to support it hands down. And then I invited you to come and join me on my radio show. I said, Pastor Kinloch, come and join me on the radio show. Your response was, Frankie, I do church.
Yes.
I do church. I'm not interested in being out front. And now here we are, an estimated 8 to 10 years later. Not only are you coming from behind the pulpit,
yes,
you're getting into politics. What moment was it for you? What moment was it for you that you woke up and said, today's going to be the day that I want to be, of all things, in politics?
Well, Frankie, I've always believed that the pulpit, particularly in the African-American church, has never been a pedestal to promote an individual. I've always believed that it should be a platform to lift an entire community of people. So I've never promoted myself and sought to make it about me. I've always sought to use the pulpit to elevate an entire community of people. But when you live in a particular place, in a particular world, you cannot hide your head in the sand of individual or privatization of success. If we lift our head and our eyes to observe the world around us, we have to confront that we are living not in fantasies, but we're living in realities. We're living in a place where, in the city of Detroit, where the poverty rate is 3 times that of the national average. We're living where we're still struggling with homelessness. We are living where people are still looking for opportunities. And as a prophetic voice and as an individual, it is my moral responsibility to do what Eddie Gall says of Princeton University, to become the type of leaders you're looking for. And so when you come across information in polls and surveys that says that 58% of the people polled do not believe that institutional politicians have their concerns as a top priority. It's time for all of us to get out of the bleachers, come down out the stands, and do whatever we can to make government work for all people.
And thank you for that response. But from never being elected ever to being mayor, not city council, not a state rep, not a state senator, but to become the mayor of the city of Detroit. Let me start here. 40,000, an estimated 40,000 members at Triumph Church.
And more, and more.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, you're going to help me make my point from a question.
Yeah.
631,000 residents in the city of Detroit, give or take another 200 or 300. You made mention during your presentation that you have no intention of stepping down as the senior pastor at Triumph Church. Those are 2 full-time jobs, Pastor. I believe you got on a cape.
Yeah.
But those are 2 full-time. How do you propose to be the senior pastor, 5 locations, 6 locations in the city of Detroit?
In a multiple metro.
9 services on Sunday? That you could do that and govern, be the head, the chief executive officer of the city of Detroit. How do you respond to people? And I'm going to come back on the back end of this based on your response. How do you respond to people that believe that it will be one of the greatest challenges for the greatest individuals, that you can lead a church membership of 40,000, as you said, plus, and govern a city of 631,000? How do you do them both?
Well, one of the things we have to be cautious and careful of is that we're not complicit in our own inequity and disparity. Because if we were talking to a white CEO, we would ask him how in the world could he lead.
Oh, I would.
Yeah, well, I know you would. I know you would. But I'm saying, I'm just in the context of the conversation in general, not personally in our instance, because I know the origin and the source of the person it comes from. But I'm talking about the overall content of the conversation. One of the things that we do in our country is that we know how to do more than one thing. That's what makes people extraordinary leaders. The other piece of this that I want to lean into, that I am not setting the precedence. This is something that is not new. When you look in the city of Detroit, when you look at full-time city council members, we've always had, you know this, just being a part of the city, we've always had full-time municipal leaders serving in multiple capacities and at the same time pastoring full-time churches.
Let me just be specific. Do you believe, is it a part of your plan that you will continue? I just want to be clear, have some clarity on it. You would still do 9 services on Sunday. And govern.
Frankie,
this is something, and Pastor, I say
that. I like this. No, I like the discussion.
So
Frankie, even right now, we have multiple campus pastors. Even right now, we have over 80 ministers of the gospel. Even right now, I bring in visitor guests and preachers from across the country. So right now, there are times where I don't do all of the services, that there are times that things come up and people are standing by as campus pastors and as ministers to preach in my stead. There are times when we bring in retired pastors from across the country in order to do that. So the Herculean responsibility of preaching is not on my shoulder, nor is the day-to-day always on the shoulder of the pastor. I provide strategic leadership. I convene and communicate the overall vision of the church. But Triumph Church is 105 years old. It's not a me leadership, it's a we leadership. And just like the mayor of the city of Detroit, that's why he has deputy mayors. That's why he has department heads. That's why we have gifted people that we want to make sure are part of this process, because it takes all of us to move the city forward.
And I wanted to address some of the issues relative to the church, because as I've spoken to people, these have been some of the questions that have been on the forefront in the minds of both the members and of course citizens in the city. Final question as it relates to church. I spoke to 10 members. 7 of them are 108% in
Yes.
support of your decision to run for the office of mayor of the city of Detroit. However, there are three who would say they're not sure that the access, which is already tough with 40,000 plus members, and you just made reference to you have associate pastors and the like, but that you would be even more detached from the basic fundamental tenets of being the pastor and the leader of a church. What do you say to the three members who say they're not sure they're comfortable with your leading both the city of Detroit and leading Triumph Church, and they will feel even more distance? What do you say to those three people who have been with Triumph Church for more than 10 years?
Well, I would say to them, first of all, I love them. I would say to them, secondly, that they are part of my family and that you don't abandon and you don't leave your family under no circumstances. But the other thing that I would say is that the kingdom and society and the responsibility morally that we have is bigger than our preferences. And we can't use our preferences to limit the power of what God and the people could accomplish. When you see in the news 3 generations of families locked in poverty and 2 kids dying in a car,
Yeah.
with this much resources and this much relationship, it has to be bigger than our preferences. It cannot be about what we want to do. It's got to be about what we need to do. And no one can turn a blinded eye and a deaf ear to what we see in our society. All of us got to step up and do our part. I've heard it so many times that politics is dirty and it's not clean. But Frankie, if we believe that and no clean people get in, how are we going to ever make sure that it's doing a good thing? And so my faith motivates me to say, like so many that have come before me, that it's not just about what we do in the walls. Ministry, this is still ministry. It's not just about what we do in the building, but it's taking and extending and expanding that outside of the building. We already doing the work. And so what I'm saying to the members of Triumph Church and to the city of Detroit, let us just continue to do the work more intensely and intentionally where it can benefit a greater number of people.
All right, great. My guest is Pastor Solomon Kinloch. He's the senior pastor of Triumph Church and most recently a candidate who has really changed the game in the race for mayor of the city of Detroit. Just a few minutes, we're going to start taking some questions as well. Put your questions in the comment. We're going to get to that. Let's transition just a little bit, Pastor Kinloch, as well to politics. This will be your first time that we recognize at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. This is the first time that individual has been elected to an elected office, not only once, but twice, and has never held public office before. But on a local level, what equity do you believe that you have with current city government in terms of city council, state representatives, the state senators, U.S. Congress, men and women, or Senate members, that this will be, and maybe you can answer this question, what kind of equity and relationships do you have with any of them? Because politics is about relationships.
Yes.
Being able to pick up the phone and call individuals to be able to get some things done. You definitely would bring, if successful, the weight of the city of Detroit to a phone call that you would make as mayor.
Yes.
But what relationships do you have to be able to get things done by picking up the phone and working with people that you don't know or you've never met or have no equity with as an elected official?
Well, for 27 years, I've been doing exactly that, serving as pastor, but also as CEO, because Frankie, one of the things that make me a unique candidate is that I built something. I didn't come from power. I didn't come from prestige. I didn't come from prosperity. I built something from ground up. And it has
Meaning your church. Meaning your church. You built the church. Okay.
Meaning the church and how we've used the church and managed the church to be a benefit to so many people. There's no politician that runs for office in this area that has not come through that church. When we start talking about programs, when we were going through COVID, we didn't wait on anyone to say what we're going to do about the digital divides that we found in our community. Triumph Church, I leverage relationships for them to step up and furnish 10,000 laptops to the community, not just to members of the church. Whether you talk about feeding programs, whether you talk about taking thousands of kids on shopping sprees and exposing them to environments outside of what they see every day, whether you talk about home repairs, whether you talk about benevolence requests. And so those
budgets on the fiduciary side of budgets,
budget, recruiting, retaining, hiring people, building coalitions among corporate. And Frankie, that's what I believe that this gives us a rare opportunity to do. So much of our resources in the city is being left on the table. The power of the administration, the mayor of the city, can not only communicate vision, he can convene conversations with stakeholders in order to carry them out. So just imagine citizens not being willed and lorded over about what they think, what somebody think is best for their community, but pulling together a table with neighborhood block club presidents, putting together a table with union leaders, with philanthropical leaders, with corporate leaders, with residents in the community, with the educators, to pull together and say, let's connect relationships and resources and come together, and you decide and define what you think is best for your community, and not see people as an afterthought, but let's start with them as the first thought.
All right. You mentioned in your comments that we're going to go to your questions in just a few minutes. Please keep those questions coming. Reese, I think we've got a couple of questions on the runway already. We're going to get to a couple of those questions. We'll do that next. But let me ask you this in your speech as well. A couple of things that you mentioned that you have, and at some point we'll present your 4-year plan to address the issue of grocery deserts, meaning grocery stores in neighborhoods, affordable housing.
And not just grocery stores, restaurants, so people ain't eating out of gas stations and liquor stores. Yes.
Got that. Ditto to that. And creating opportunities. And you said one of the greatest affordable housing plans to be able to purchase housing. What of that 4-year plan can you share today with the audience that is watching, that you've not shared the whole 4-year plan yet? But how do you propose to do it? And how would you respond to none of the predecessors, if you're successful, that they've not been able to do what you propose to be able to do?
Well, one of the things I think it has to be is it has to be a we mayoral administration and not a me. And sitting on philanthropic boards, you're able to see that there are so many and so much resources in our community.
Why do you think they have not been? Why do you think then that they've not been utilized with the number of vacant houses?
One of the things I would say is there have been some great things done, but one of the things we have to confess is that everything has not been done. We have great foundation, but now we have to build a house so that people can live in those particular houses. When you think about, I believe that the Duggan administration was bringing the city out of a difficult and a deficit and a dark time, and they did some great things. Even when you look at the budget the other day, they've done some great things, but we have to go from footing and foundation to erecting an overall vision for the city, and you can't do that without people being involved in that particular piece and that particular thing. When I look at all of the philanthropic dollars alone, you could see that it could be upwards of $500-600 million just in their annual spending. When was the last time
that could be allocated to the affordable?
That could be allocated to not just affordable homes, but to other things that are needed in the community. We have to look at holistic approaches. When you talk about educating kids, you can't talk about educating kids and not talk about housing. You can't talk about educating kids and not talk about food desert. You can't talk about educating kids and not talk about jobs for their parents so they can have economic resource. You can't talk about that and not talk about how to create them opportunities and pathways through home ownership in order to build generational wealth. And so I believe a coalition bringing them together in my administration could be intentional about directing dollars that we can have some metrics and say, this is how well things are being done.
All right. I thank you so much for that response. Pastor Solomon Kinloch is my guest. Time goes by quickly. I have him only for 30 minutes. I want to get in as much as I possibly can. If I could steal, I could say steal, but I mean it in a loving way to say steal in front of the pastor. But if I could steal some additional time, I'll try and do that. But to that, you mentioned education, and then recently we're going to come to you. Clearly, in order to grow the city, it's grown since 2022 by 1,800 people. What we know that young families will not move to a community, pick one anywhere USA, will not move to a community unless there's a public school district that is compatible to the kind of excellence that they want for their children, or they have to opt to be able to pay for private school. Do you believe at any point, or just in your estimation, that the mayor's office should be responsible for the public school system? This has been a conversation in the city of Detroit for a very, very long time. You talk about a district over the last 10, 15, 20 years that went from 100,000 students to under 50,000. Do you believe that the mayor's office should either, one, have a seat on the board of someone that they could select there, or do you think that the public school district, because if you're going to grow the city, you've got to grow the public education system and have one that people are confident in. Do you think that the public education system should be under the guides of the mayor, or like in some cities where the mayor has a seat of an individual they appoint to be on the board? Your thought on that?
I believe that we ought to always respect the will of the people. That question has been put in front of the people, and the people have made that decision. But what the mayor of the city cannot do, current mayor and any future mayor, is ignore that the city has to be in partnership with the district to make sure that they have the resources, the vision, and the strategy in order to make that happen. I believe that all other options ought to be explored and exalted before we confront our community with a divisive question like that.
That one you think is divisive? To grow the city, you have to have a quality educational system.
Where you know that has been a topic, because you and I are both Detroiters, that has been a topic and has been a point of contention. I agree with you. There has to be, in the words of Dr. King, this is the fierce urgency of the right now. I am in total agreement with you. We have to be willing to do anything and all things necessary to fix our district. Our children deserve not to be treated as if they're guinea pigs where we are doing tests and case studies on them. We have to make sure that we have
paying them to come to school.
Paying them to come to school. We have to make sure that we are giving them the best platform and launching path to soar. How we do that, I don't want to lord and will my preferences on people, but what I will do is convene conversations and continue to communicate to the city what those metrics and those benchmarks should be in order for our children to not just survive, but thrive.
All right, great. Reese, we have some questions from our social media page for Pastor Kinloch. Our first question.
Yes, we do. So first question comes from an Yvonne DaCosta, and she's wondering, how are you planning on separating the church from the state? I think that's a great question, because something that is
just ask the question. Ask the question.
Okay. That is just something that we are struggling with.
One of the things we need to be reminded of is that in the minds of our founding fathers, when we talked about separation, church and the state, it was to make sure that the state didn't get into the church. It never was intended for the church not to be involved, because many times people forget that the church's address is a compilation of the city addresses. So the people that show up at church are not coming from another place in a space, from another orbit. They're coming from the community. That's why every politician tries to get into those places and spaces, because that's where the people gather together in a way in the week that they don't do no other time. One of the things that my administration would do, we already have on the legislative side, you have a inspector general that is reactive. What we would do is make sure that on the executive branch of government, that you would have a chief compliance officer, integrity officer, that would ensure that their monitoring and respecting.
We're not talking about Doge, are we?
No.
We're going to create a Doge office in the city of Detroit.
No, we're just talking about someone that would just ensure that we will have someone that's making sure that the administration is operating with integrity and above reproach on a daily basis.
And what do you say to people who don't engage church, Pastor? What do you say to the people who don't engage church every Saturday and Sunday and Bible study?
I'm not running for a pastor. I'm running for the mayor of the city of Detroit. So whether you're white or black or brown, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're straight or whether you're gay, whether you are PhD or GED, I will be a mayor for all people.
All right, great. We have about 7 minutes. Reese, a second question from our social media pages. Keep the questions coming. Go.
Yes. So one is, how do you plan on helping people not eat food from gas stations? That was a great question.
Well, one of the things that we have to do, and one of the challenges I give to institutional politicians, is to stay connected to people all year long with opportunities to continue with education and information. So many times we mismanage opportunities because we only want to show up around election time. That's one of the reasons that I believe that I can pastor and be mayor, so that we can continue to keep our ears to the ground, listening to what people have to say. Don't decrease our places and our spaces, but increase those places and spaces so that we can continue to have ongoing conversation. There's no reason in the world why over 77% of the people in the city of Detroit are not even engaged in the process. And so one of the things we want to do is make sure that we're able to continue to stay in tune, in touch, and in contact with the residents in the city of Detroit in order to make sure that we are educating and they're getting the information so that they can have access to the resources. I hear it so many times, and I've heard it over 27 years, when employers come to the city or an institution have resources and they say, we can't find nobody. Where are the employees? I said, you're looking in the wrong places. You're going to the wrong community trust agents, influencers. We hosted a job fair at the church. 3,000 people showed up for an employer. They were trying to figure out, why haven't we seen these numbers before? I said, because a lot of times we're misrepresented in our community. We don't need people who are showing up at the table and who are negotiating for their own personal benefit. There is no reason for me to step into other places and spaces outside of the pulpit, other than the fact that it needs to happen. And what I am hoping through my candidacy is that I will inspire so many other young people to step into this place and space, because if you want to see change, you have to become a model of that change yourself.
All right, great. One of my final questions for you, as we get ready to wrap up in about the next 4 minutes or so, clearly next year there will be a new governor in place. We are experiencing nationally and internationally a new presidential administration that is, some would say, creating a lot of instability, a lot of fear and anxiety. Detroit is a border city to Ontario, Canada. The president has made it very clear that tariffs on Canada in particular will be imposed, and Canada has not backed down at all, even in terms of providing energy to the U.S. and the tariffs. We know that there are a lot of people from Ontario who work, some live in the city of Detroit, and we share residencies between the two. How do you respond working with a presidential administration? I think if he was to pick some of his favorite cities, Detroit would not be one of them. How do you propose to get things done in the city of Detroit federally? With any federal dollars or any plan, any conversations that you may have had under this threat of tariffs that can directly affect the city of Detroit, with the threat of tariffs and what Canada is looking at doing. How do you propose to engage the federal government as mayor of the city of Detroit if successful?
Well, one of the things that the Kinloch administration would do is to stay true to what we have heard depicted and described, America the beautiful. If America is going to be beautiful and not repeat some ugly seasons and times that we've had, we have to operate in a way of integrity and dignity and respect. And one of those things that we can do is explore common grounds. Nobody.
Respectfully, I only have 2 minutes. I only have about 3 minutes.
Okay. We will find the things. We will find the things that we can find common ground on, and the things that with the president and whoever. The things that we can find common ground on, we'll find common ground on. The things that we don't agree on, we will have to fight and defend the dignity and integrity of our people.
Mm-hmm. Do you have relationships on the congressional side and the Senate side with either of the current elected officials that can help you engage that process? And could you just comment on that in about 45 seconds, that you believe your conversations with the two congressional members and the Senate member who represents the city of Detroit and Washington? Can you talk about, if anything, publicly, what you believe they can assist you in bringing in terms of resources from Washington under this administration, where they're not listening to anyone in those three particular parties, three particular offices?
Well, one of the things, I think this is a new day, and it's a reminder to all of us that elections have consequences, and we have to make sure that we take our souls and we show up at the polls, because we have to be responsible for what takes in our community as it relates to relationships that we put in these offices, also the management of the resources.
Okay, great. Final question from my audience. We have a lot of questions. Last one, and then, Pastor, I will give you an opportunity for your closing comments.
I hope it won't be the last time. I won't be the last time.
Listen, you have an open mic here. You please, more than welcome. And I cannot tell you the barrage, Pastor, of text messages I've gotten from people who have my personal information and the DMs that I've gotten on Facebook. I got to tell you, people are very respectful in this process. And most importantly, and one of the things I've always prided myself, Pastor, I hope that you remember to know me well enough to know that it is what is in the best interest of the people with the access that I have to give them the information they have, to give them the information they need from the people who are making the decisions. This isn't about Frankie Darcell. This is about Frankie Darcell bringing to the table the people who are going to impact the quality of life of people I believe that you and I both love, and that's the residents, just the most incredible people in the city of Detroit who deserve the very, very best. So one, I thank you for being here. Know that you always have an opportunity to engage my audience and the extended audience and people who are watching, quite frankly, around the world that are watching now because of social media and the like. Let me take, so to your question, Pastor, anytime, just let me know.
Okay.
Final question from online. Can you create green spaces that will help feed the community through gardens?
It looks like he's frozen.
We're having some trouble.
There you go. There we go. We can hear you now, Pastor.
Are you all good?
Yeah, there you are. Yeah, it looks like all of a sudden we became frozen. Let's see if we can
hear the question.
Okay. The question real quick is, can you create green spaces where community gardens can feed the people?
Okay, I think this is technology at its best.
Oh, man.
Yeah, this is technology.
I can hear you now. Can you ask the question one more time?
Great.
I think
can you help create green spaces that are community gardens that will help feed the people of Detroit?
One of the things that we have got to remember is that Detroit is more than 139 square miles. We have so much land. We have to come up with creative ways to use the land and to give people a surrounding and an environment that is serene and also that is safe. And so one of the things that we will continue to do is to convene conversations about how the best way in order for us to move our city forward. And that includes those green spaces.
All right. Pastor Solomon Kinloch is my guest, candidate for mayor of the city of Detroit. Listen, he had that press conference and changed the game. That's a fact. Changed the game. You were even asked, you mentioned in one of the articles that I read as well, that somebody asked you to get out of the game. Stay in your lane. Get out because you changed.
Well,
You
well,
changed.
well,
You
they
changed.
wish we would, but at the end of the day, the dire straits of our people demand a extraordinary leader for extraordinary and
All
extraordinary.
right. And why when this primary is coming up in August, why should they select you to be the next mayor of the city of Detroit before the general election? Why you and not another candidate?
Someone put on their T-shirt, "I rock with Kinloch," and I want
Pastor, I rock with Kinloch.
I rock with Kinloch. I want the residents of the city of Detroit to know that for 27 years, and if they give me this opportunity, I have rocked for the residents of the city of Detroit. I've used my platform to benefit and to be a blessing to them. And if they put me in that seat, they can trust that they will always have somebody at that table that's going to fight for their best interests and won't be trying to be political expedient, won't be trying to set up something for the next season of life, but they will have somebody at that table that will have the courage, the character, and conviction to always do what's best for the citizens of Detroit.
All right. I think you better get that trademarked. I rock with Kinloch.
Yes.
That was kind of hot. Now, if you've been to any of the services, you know that that Pastor Kinloch is one of the greatest orators of our day for sure. But the I rock with Kinloch says a lot.
I got to do something with that, and I didn't even come up with that. I just saw it.
Yes, I rock with Kinloch. Wow, that was great. I think, again, technology doing what it does. I do want to take an opportunity and thank. There we go. There we are. Pastor Kinloch, thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate you.
I
And
appreciate
we'll
you.
be following this process. And again, you're more than welcome anytime to engage the audience. I want to engage folks to share this interview as well. I thank you for being so candid. Too often when I interview elected officials, I get a list of things they don't want me to ask.
Mhm.
Don't ask about this. Don't ask about that. And of course, I don't do the interview. I believe that I ask the questions that our audience is interested in. You never once, or your handlers, suggested that I ask or do not ask some questions. So I appreciate you for that. And clearly, thank you for your candidness in this conversation. And we will be watching along the way. Thank you so much.
And I still love you more now than I did before the start of the show.
Pastor Kinloch, thank you so much. Be well.
Thank you. I love you. God bless you.
I love you back, and ain't nothing you can do about that, Pastor. I appreciate you. Thank you. As he signs off, Reese, thank you so much. I do want to thank Reese Green for navigating the conversation as well and taking your comments. I'm going to be reading through some of the comments as well. We'll be going live again shortly for this particular podcast, the podcast conversation series with Frankie Darcell. To everyone watching, thank you for joining us for this conversation. Time goes by so quickly, and there were still probably 4 or 5 other questions that I could have asked during this interview. I hope that we were able to get in some. I believe, Reese, number one, the majority wanted to know in terms of, I think you mentioned one of the questions earlier about, quote, church and state. There are those who believed, what role would the pastor play in the event that he was successful at becoming the next mayor of the city of Detroit, that he would maintain, and he addressed that issue here, that he would maintain his city, his senior position at Triumph Church. And yet things have never been done before. There's always a first time, that he would maintain his role as CEO, serving as mayor of the city of Detroit. He also mentioned as a footnote that there are associate pastors, guest speakers, and others who would step in when needed and necessary. That was his response to that question from both members and people who are non-members of the church that wanted to know how he would navigate through those two things. He addressed that. I want you to share this interview with your family and your friends. We'll come back as well. Make sure that you go to YouTube page, click like and subscribe. I appreciate that. We are now live, Reese, on what? Facebook, Instagram?
We're on both. And
Okay,
we're gonna upload this on
get in the
YouTube.
screen. I see the one left eye.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Screen time. Yeah.
Yes, we are live on both Facebook and Instagram, and it's also going to be uploaded on the YouTube.
All right, so make sure that you check it out on YouTube as well. I do want to thank Pastor Solomon Kinloch for his time. I have received, and so that people know, because I can only imagine what's going to be in the comments, for any candidates, and I've been contacted by 2 other candidates who are running for the office of mayor of the city of Detroit, and in the process now of scheduling those interviews as well, in the interest of fairness and equity, that any candidate that is interested, that is running for the office of mayor, I'd be more than happy to have that kind of candid conversation here as well. But I have to tell you, when I posted this as well, which everyone know, Pastor Kinloch has changed the game in terms of the race. It had changed the trajectory of this race. There are 1 or 2 candidates, including City Council President Mary Sheffield, Representative Durhal. There are a number of individuals that were considered shoe-in. Chantel Jenkins, which I think people cannot sleep on. They cannot sleep on Chantel. There's a lot of space between now and August, and what's going to happen. It is about raising money as well, how they're going to compete. People are asking the question about if it's about name recognition. That is a question as well. So any of the candidates who are interested in running for, who are running for mayor and interested in being a guest on Conversations with Frankie Darcell, you can reach me at iheartmedia.com. And for those who have already reached out, we are working on right now scheduling some of those interviews. So again, to Pastor Solomon Kinloch, thank you for your time, sir. To you, Reese Green, thank you for sitting in as well. And to Mike Powers for producing this podcast. My name is Frankie Darcell. As always, I love you to life, and ain't nothing you can do about that. Thanks a lot for joining us.
All right. Hello.